Homeless Network Newz is back to inform the twin. HNN re-begins. Zip zop zapping it again. We bring in actual stories, real folks, factual exploratory. We track, we scope even beyond the MM territory. Network news, hard hitting on a beat. Various points of view, journalistic whipping it from the street. So have your seat, cause it's time to bring more issues to light, cause that's what we do. Z newsing it up right. Yo, flow, intro the HNN crew. HNN crew. HNN crew. HNN, back again, here we grow, back in the know, back with the show where packs will flow, just rock and roll this episode of HNN, back again, here we grow, back in the know, back with the show where packs will flow, just rock and roll this episode of HNN, back again, here we grow, back in the know, back with the show where packs will flow, just rock and roll this episode. Well, hello everybody. A hearty welcome to America and to you, our viewers. Welcome to Zamya's Homeless Network Newz. Now, I'm your host, Corey Walton, coming to you live from Zamya's world headquarters in downtown Minneapolis. And the title of this week's episode is No One Asked Me, But. And the sponsors for this week's episode is the City of Lakes Community Land Trust. The Minneapolis-based City of Lakes Community Land Trust is a nonprofit organization that builds community by providing sustainable home ownership through a community land trust model. Now, it enables low to moderate income individuals and families to purchase homes in Minneapolis. City of the Lakes does this through tenant unions, rent stabilization, stronger enforcement of renter protections, and cooperatively owned housing. Now, to learn more about City of the Lakes Community Land Trust, drop by their website at www.clclt.org or just click on their posting on our Facebook page. Now, on with our show. And what better way to kick things off than with marvelous Marvin Howard and Esther O in one of our anchor features, Homeless Network Newz. Now, this week's edition focuses on climate change and its impact on homelessness and displacement. Now, just a heads up for our viewers, this episode is sprinkled with a generous amount of, well, how should I say, disgruntled sentiment. Now, you know, we at HNN like to keep everything on a positive tip, sort of upbeat. But if you really know us, you also know once in a while we have to register our complaint, hit the nail on the head. In other words, we just got to name what's wrong. So I guess what I'm saying is, no one asked me, but something has got to change fast. Check this out.
Welcome to today's news. Not new news. We got the same old news. Oh, Esther, remember that old musical, Stop the World, I Want to Get Off? You ever feel like that?
Yeah, I do, Marvin, but not right now because guess what? We got some news to share.
What you got, Esther?
Well, even though the world hasn't stopped, some people are managing to get off of it.
What?
Listen to this headline. Star Trek's William Shatner blasts into space. 90-year-old William Shatner, Hollywood actor who played Captain Kirk in the Star Trek films and TV series, took off aboard a rocket system developed by Amazon.com founder Jeff Bezos. Those aboard got to experience a short period of weightlessness as they climbed high enough to see the curvature of the Earth through the capsule's big windows. Shatner said,
"Everybody in the world needs to do this."
Tickets were priced at $200,000 to $300,000.
And for the debut ride, a ticket was auctioned off at a price of $28 million?
Meanwhile, back here on Earth, in our world, the headlines read, homelessness is a crisis.
Duh. That sure is old news.
And climate change makes it much worse.
Worse? Doggone it. Captain Kirk, take me with you.
Homelessness and housing unaffordability overlap with climate disasters in disturbing ways.
Crises collide as climate emergencies push America's homeless population to the brink.
Not only are rising temperatures a danger to individuals already experiencing homelessness, but extreme weather events driven by our changing climate are leaving more and more people with nowhere to turn.
Woo! Hurricane! 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 Hurricane!
In New Orleans, dozens of the city's homeless remained unsheltered amidst Hurricane Ida. As Hurricane Ida approached, dozens of New Orleans homeless remained unsheltered, sleeping on sidewalks, in vehicles, and in bus shelters. The mayor had announced that some shelters would be open for those on the streets or in encampments. However, the morning of Hurricane Ida, several homeless people were still on the streets. Some asleep at bus shelters, others crammed under building overhangs or wandering around. As hurricane strength winds began to batter the city, people could be seen wandering the streets with their belongings in tow. Many said they had no other option.
Where else am I going to go? Mars?
Homeless populations across the US will grow as more natural disasters strike.
Phew. Hurricane season's over. And now, oh my gosh, it's hotter than hell. Scorching high temperatures. Jesus.
Heat waves and homelessness. Record-setting heat puts people experiencing homelessness at risk.
Whew. Many people experiencing homelessness are living in the hottest areas of the cities. On top of the record heat, the urban heat island effect, a phenomenon where urban areas lack green spaces.
That's places that lack trees, grass, shrubs, etc.
These urban heat islands are hotter on average than other parts of a city. As more encampments pop up on the pavement in metro areas, there's a growing concern that unhoused people could be at higher risk for extreme heat exposure and dangerous health effects.
Last summer in Phoenix, there are 53 days of 110-degree heat. In Maricopa County, home to Phoenix, more than half of the 323 confirmed heat-related deaths last year were people experiencing homelessness.
And forget this, let me out of here. Bezos, can I get a ticket? Okay, I better get out of the city and head to a quiet, breezy beach town.
Rising sea level to leave hundreds of millions homeless.
I just wanted to go fishing.
Approximately 44% of the world's population live within 100 miles of a shoreline, including 40% of Americans. Either permanently or during storm surges, at least 800 million people are at risk of being affected by rising sea levels.
I don't even know how to swim. Jeff, Captain Kirk, get me away from all this wet water. Take me to a dry place.
Drought clobbers the world.
Whew, man, I'm wet. Oh.
In the United States, nearly one half of the country is currently afflicted by drought. Water resources are at a record low due to global warming. Drought conditions are spreading waterborne diseases throughout displacement settlements.
Water scarcity triggers the refugee crisis. Every year, thousands of people are forced to leave their homes as a direct consequence of climate-related impediments to drinking water and food production.
In these particular cases, the migration is not related to a sudden natural disaster, but is a response to a progressive reduction of water resources that affects the chance of survival, homelessness, and the climate crisis.
Okay, I get it. No more fishing trips. Let's try over here. Wait. You smell that? Fire! 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 Come on, Captain Kirk, remember me, Marvin? I'm the only other Black person outside of Uhura on that ship.
Wildfires have displaced an astonishing 200,000 California residents, leaving them stranded with nowhere to go at a time of mass unemployment, a place where the housing crisis finds its roots.
But not everyone suffers equally. The resulting population shift is likely to increase poverty and widen the gulf between the rich and the poor, like between me and Jeff. Climate catastrophe also disproportionately impacts communities of color who are also already more likely to experience homelessness. Yellow, stop the world. I want to get off. Okay, I can't. I'm not going south to New Orleans or west to California or east to the Atlantic Ocean. I guess I'll just settle down here in Minneapolis.
Climate change is here and now. Climate change threatens the very things that make Minnesota beautiful. From our magnificent 10,000 lakes to our farmable land and clean air. Our economy, our cities, our unique and cherished ecosystems, and our health and well-being are already being compromised.
You got some change? Got some climate change? How about some plain old straight up change? Spare change, change a tire, change the climate change. Got some change? Got change? All right. How about change this? The richest 50 Americans now have as much wealth as the bottom 165 million. You thought Captain Kirk was a big spender? Elon Musk company is charging a whopping, ready for this, $55 million for ticket space. Can you believe that? That's just
Data. Is that you?
I came here to do a little math. According to the Secretary of HUD, it can cost as little as $13,000 a year to house someone presently homeless. In 2018, the Wilder count states that there were 10,233 people homeless in Minnesota. And on any given night, 10,233 people times $13,000 equals $133,029,000. The cost of less than half a ticket to go to space with Elon Musk.
In the words of Captain Kirk,
the greatest danger facing us is ourselves. All decks stand by, Captain out. And that's it for today's news.
May the force be with you. Oh, do I have the wrong thing?
Yeah, that's Star Wars. That's
oh,
Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
You better be lucky you're not at a convention.
Forget that. Nah.
Yes, yes, yes. Good stuff there indeed. As always, with Marvelous Marvin and Esther O. Now, do you have a no one asked me but thought in your head you want to share with us? Drop it into the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, let's keep this Z train moving down the tracks. Next up, a groovy feature we called That Blows My Mind. Now, it is the season to be jolly, y'all, but there's also a little space during the season to call some things out, right? And that's exactly what two of my fellow troupe members, Annette B. and Roberto Blood, do in this next segment. On the topic of housing and winter-related issues, no one really asked them, but...
Hello and welcome to That Blows My Mind. I'm Robert Blood, along with Annette Bryant. We're going to vent a little bit here today. And I'm going to go ahead and just pass it right on to Annette. Why don't you let us know what blows your mind, Annette?
What blows my mind is that every time it snows, you know how to drive.
What blows my mind is all these buildings going up downtown and not one affordable housing for anybody. What, only 10% of the population can even afford to live downtown?
What blows my mind is, where are we going to keep all these people this winter?
What blows my mind is I'm so tired of people pointing at people on the street saying they're dirty and they're drunks and they don't work and that's why they're homeless. I work, I don't drink, I'm not a drug addict. You're blaming people, you're stereotyping people for something that they're not even doing. Stereotype me and we will have words.
What blows my mind is how many people that are homeless that are very educated, and people really don't know that.
And what blows my mind is I understand that we acknowledge the taking of native land, but what we don't talk about is their language and their heritage and their way of life. You know, there's no goodbye in Chippewa and there's no curse words. And the Native Americans were not out looking for fights. Fights went out looking for them. That's what blows my mind.
What blows my mind is that there's not more love in this world for each other.
I am in total agreement with that. What blows my mind is the way people judge others by the way they look. not how they treat them, other people. Just because you drive a Maserati and live in a $100,000 home doesn't mean you're better than me. Because I'd rather be poor and happy than rich and miserable any day. Anything else that blows your mind, or?
Let me see. Let's ask the people. What blows your mind?
Yeah. What blows your mind? I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I'm Robert Blood.
And I'm Annette Bryant.
Now that blows my mind. Look, I love it when Zamya members get together and rap about stuff, because one thing you can always count on, we're going to keep it 100, right? Thanks so much to Annette B. and Roberto Blood for holding it down. Now let's transition into an interesting segment featuring a special friend of the show. His name is Andrew Crump, one of our Dorothy Day workshop participants. Andrew is here to tell us a little bit about his personal story, a story that includes how racism and housing discrimination is a toxic mix that can and often does lead to homelessness. Here's Andrew's story.
I had been living in Moran up north for approximately a year. The property manager, along with several other people in the building, didn't want me there. I was the only black person in the building. I didn't bother anybody. I just kept to myself and went about my daily business. The property manager came to my ex and said that I needed to fill out an application. And I was like, what? You didn't put me on the lease? So I filled out the application. Months went by. No response. The next thing I know, I get off of work. I'm watching TV and my ex comes in and says, you got to go. The property manager says, you got to go. What about my application? No concrete response. My ex's friend filled out an application in the same building and it came back within a week. At the place that I have now, I filled out an application and it came back in just over a week. The people in that building just didn't want me there. I go to a shelter in Pine City. Then I had to sleep outside for 2 nights. I was cold. I was one of 2 black people in the whole damn town, so people knew who I was. So I'm sleeping out there freezing. I've been subjected to racism. Hell, I'm from Memphis. I know what it looks like. I just never let it bother me. But I knew this was discrimination. So I made some calls. No one would pick up my case. One attorney said it was legitimate, but no attorney up north would pick it up. I was at a loss for words. I hadn't seen racial discrimination that up close. It's shocking. Did this really just happen? And you're powerless to do anything because nobody wants to help you. So you just have to take a big glass of water and swallow. But it's a blessing in disguise because I wanted to come back to the cities anyways. I don't know, the big man upstairs just said, look, you need to move. Everything worked out. It's working out. I have housing, I have funding, I have what I need.
What an experience and what a story shared by Andrew Crump. Now, just as an FYI, Andrew's compelling story was told as part of Beacon Interfaith's Housing Collaborative's Bring It Home program last week at St. Stephen's Church in Bloomington. Indeed, some powerful stuff there. Once again, thank you, Andrew, for sharing. All right, this next segment is interesting. Now, I want you to put your ears on for a minute and really pay attention to what you're about to hear. It's a reenactment of a conversation among real-life neighbors on a real-life online forum. So this ain't fictional, y'all. And I know no one asked me, but this makes me chuckle at first, but then it makes me mad. Check this out.
Last summer, the current Minneapolis Park Board voted to allow the homeless to live in Minneapolis parks. What do you think?
I don't think the homeless would like the neighborhood watch that is in my neighborhood.
Nobody cares what I think. Neighbor who's asking the question, you obviously wants to ask, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the parks should be for everyone. And I have seen firsthand and have heard others tell me that they no longer bring their children to the park. And I think that that is unfortunate.
But I don't think that it's okay to have an encampment in a park or anywhere for that matter that's not set up for the filth, violence, and the unsanitary conditions that it brings. I think they should, put the insane back in the hospitals, the disabled back in the places wherever they came from, and also the drunks and the addicts. Who knows? But when I'm not sure. But then there are those that live very well off of the goodness of others.
Right. And I'm not against the homeless. If the current park board members want to tackle Minneapolis homeless housing issues, well, there is a state office for that. And it is called Housing and Urban Development. So stay in your lane.
Well, considering we don't give them proper options that have enough space, I see this as a temporary solution. Let me ask, should our unhoused neighbors be camping in the parks or on the street somewhere? No, but we don't provide dignified options that focus on harm reduction for the drug users and actual recovery. It is just wild and ludicrous to expect that you can have someone come off the street and just expect them to be clean right away as a requirement for a home. These people are our neighbors and they deserve dignified housing and care just like we do. We should be bringing people up, not putting them at ground zero every time they get randomly kicked out by the city and all their stuff is destroyed unreasonably. It is not nice. It's not fair. It's not right.
That is where it starts, and this is where it goes. The Parks Board should in no way enter into a landlord-tenant relationship with the homeless. Once they establish squatters' rights, then they can put up more permanent housing, and then there's gardens and water and sewage. And then the parks have ceased to become parks, and now it's just row housing.
Should I mute this neighbor? Yeah, I think I will.
Oh, yeah, well, where did you take your methodology coursework?
Parks are not campgrounds. Bad idea. What about the kids in the play in the parks? They're everywhere.
Right. I've been told by park staff that parents have complained, but they were slow to react. Imagine not being able to bring your children to the park because the park board decided to give them only to the homeless, and that is what they did.
Parks are for everyone, I want to remind you, except the homeless. Oh, not them. Check your privilege there. Why don't you fight for sustainable housing and don't demonize folks who have less than you?
Is there anywhere in between?
Not often.
Yeah, well, most of the homeless, they got drug problems, and that they could get housing if they wanted to, but they don't even follow the rules.
The rules. Well, okay, it's true that some people with alcohol addiction and mental health issues, they don't follow the rules. That is true. And it's also true that in some cases people choose. But for others, their addictions and their illnesses completely control them. Now, does this mean that they should have to live under the bridges? I don't think so. By the river somewhere? I don't think so. Behind a dumpster in an alley? No.
Well, I've shared some thoughts on one or two other posters here on Nextdoor. I felt ignored, overlooked, discriminated against. I tossed out the idea of a person or couple who could afford the time and effort to sponsor one person or two who are willing to go the extra mile to live in a safety and comfort. There are many comments on the post, and nothing ever became of the subject. Now, I was homeless once, so I know from experience that on both sides, I have no credit, no diploma for this kind of work, only my experience. And if by chance there's a place at the table, I'll be happy to sit and listen and share.
Say, does anyone know what channel the Gophers are playing on tomorrow?
So what are your thoughts on that segment? Now, during our last season, we did an episode entitled Kids Say the Darndest Things. Well, let's unofficially dub that last segment Adults Say Darnder Things. Know what I mean? But seriously, there's a lot of diverse thoughts and feelings about homelessness expressed by those who are well-versed on the topic, those that may know very little, and everywhere in between. And that's why we at Zamya do what we do, because raising awareness is the first step toward changing hearts, minds, and hopefully conversations among friends and neighbors. Again, I remind you, if you got a "no one asked me but" thought burning in your brain, drop it into the chat box so we can hear from you. Now, as you can see, I'm starting to smile, right? Well, if you know me, you know I love me some Zamya interview segments. And that's just what we have for you next with Zamya extended family member, Katie Burgess. Now, Katie worked with Zamya at our Dorothy Day workshops. And if we have our way about it, frankly, we'll be working with her a lot more in the future. And talk about storyteller. Well, see for yourself as Katie shares a special story with all of us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Burgess, and this is my beautiful house that I bought with the City of Lakes Community Land Trust. I got a skylight. The idea of like buying a house was really kind of far-fetched. Luckily, my partner found it to be a completely reasonable process, and convinced me to at least, see how far we could get with it. The City of Lakes Community Land Trust has a like home buying class that you have to take. Actually, it's like kind of your first step in engaging with them. And this is my cat, who also lives here. Say hi, Mr. Mac. You can't buy through the land trust if you make above a certain level. Part of the process is working with traditional lenders to get a mortgage. And to be able to get a mortgage, you also have to be able to show, I think it was 3 years worth of taxes, that you're gainfully employed, things, have good credit, right? So it ended up being kind of one of those situations where you're having to walk a little bit of a thin line between, being, poor enough, but also stable enough financially. What happens with the land trust is that they end up owning the land, and we own the house that is on the land, right? So there's a partnership that's happening in terms of the ownership of the property as a whole. And if we sell it in the future, we're selling the house, and the land trust keeps the land. And the reason that's why I think that's a good thing is because that means the only person or people that can buy this house in the future are again going to have to work with the land trust and are going to have to kind of walk that thin line. They're going to have to be folks who aren't making a ton of money, and are going to want to actually live here, right? So it means that it can't be sold to a developer or somebody who's just trying to flip it. And it means that somebody, who is low income is also going to move in here. Somebody, so it just means that this neighborhood, it means that I get to believe at least that this neighborhood has a better chance of surviving. We gave, a couple $1,000s for earnest money. That was the biggest chunk of money that we had to invest. Then we showed up to closing with a check for $75. That's my favorite part of the story, is that I there's a version of the story that I can tell where I bought a house for $75. Not only do you get down payment assistance, you also get repairs assistance. So I guess that's all. Thanks for listening to my story.
So maybe you didn't ask her, but Katie had a little something to share with us, didn't she? About how much those banks make off of our homes, okay? Now that's what I'm talking about. You know, sometimes you just got to register that complaint. Thank you, Katie, for your thoughts and your words. Okay, question. What would you not do for $1 million? I wonder how some of my Zamya troupe members would answer that question.
What I wouldn't do for $1 million is steal.
I would not sell out my people for $1 million.
I wouldn't juggle naked in the Arctic for $1 million.
I wouldn't sell my soul for $1 million.
I wouldn't kill someone for $1 million.
I wouldn't run a naked race for $1 million.
I wouldn't forget my mother and sister.
I wouldn't take a soul-sucking job like a Wall Street banker for $1 million.
I wouldn't kill for $1 million.
I would not get married for $1 million.
I wouldn't move to Korea and live in a hut underneath a rock for $1 million.
I wouldn't intentionally hurt anyone for $1 million.
I would never not share the $1 million I got.
I would never bungee jump.
That's exactly what I was going to say next. I wouldn't bungee jump for $1 million.
I wouldn't do crack or meth for $1 million.
I wouldn't destroy for $1 million.
I would not play a part that belittled my culture or any other culture for $1 million.
I wouldn't join a cult of gnomes that worshipped Methuselah for $1 million.
I would not give up my wonderful personality and who I am for $1 million.
I would never not talk to family, friends, and community for $1 million.
I would never take my life for $1 million.
I would never forget who I am or where I came from.
I would never marry without love for $1 million.
So what would you not do for $1 million?
$1 million. Interesting question. Now, what would you not do for $1 million? You got an answer? Drop it into the chat box. And thank you, Zam Fam, for that thought-provoking segment. Well, it's time to put a wrap on it. And not just our final episode of the season, but our final episode of Homeless Network Newz. Yes, unfortunately, this is our farewell from HNN. Now, for 6 seasons, our goal at HNN was to engage, inform, entertain, and enlighten, and we hope we accomplished all those things in our bottom line effort to raise awareness on the issue of homelessness. But don't worry, we ain't going nowhere. That's right. In case you were wondering, HNN might be signing off, but Zamya is here to stay. And we want to thank all of you for tuning in to HNN over the entire 6-season run. But before we sign off, one more time, we'd like to thank our entire Zam family, our Zamtastic directors, Esther O and K Flo, Zamya Artistic Director, Moran, AKA Junior Ward, and a warm thanks to all of my Zamya troupe mates for bringing such informative and incredible segments during this episode and all of our previous episodes. And a special thanks to the sponsors of this week's episode, City of Lakes Community Land Trust. Once again, to learn more about that wonderful organization and what they do, drop by their website at www.clclt.org or just click on their posting on our Facebook page. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for our quarterly Z newsletter. And for all the latest, you can also click on the events tab on our Facebook page. And while you're there, don't forget to hit like. In the meantime, we'll see you at our workshops, productions, and events, both online and in person over the upcoming days, weeks, months, and years. And on the topic of homelessness, remember our motto, please stop staring and start seeing. From our entire Zam family, goodbye and happy holidays, everyone, from Homeless Network Newz.